All right, so this is Kirk,
And this is Rags.
and you're listening to The Current Podcast. Our website, cvrnt.com. If you want to email us, cvrntpodcast@gmail.com. We're on Twitter, cvrnt, Facebook, Instagram. Hit us up. Subscribe on iTunes, Google Play. And what are we talking about today, Rags?
So today we'll chat a bit about stuff from GDC, go over one of the hackathons that Kirk attended, and we also have just a couple other miscellaneous tidbits of info. I actually wanted to bring up something before we start talking about GDC, and that's essentially I hadn't actually used my Vive in a while. When I say a while, maybe like a month and a half. So I actually tried to start using the Vive again, like last week or maybe 10 days ago. What I started trying to do was I first had to turn it on. Then I spent a day. But when I say a day, I get an hour time window, right? So that hour that I had to update all the stuff on my computer and the Vive, the base station, everything. So that took a while. Then the next day, it actually just wouldn't work. Like it just wouldn't pick up. Like, I tried kicking off, I think Google Earth, and it like crashed, and then something else, and it was the Vive that crashed. It just had the gray screen, and man, like finally it was the third day when I actually started getting to work, and then the game that I was playing, that started having issues. I don't know if those issues are the game or the issues are because of the Vive not tracking properly or not. I don't know. So,
What game was it? Do you remember?
Vanishing Realms.
I haven't played that.
It's one of the few games that I'm actually playing. I've been very selective about trying to spend money on games on the Vive as of now, until I actually figure out really going to use it going forward. That's, I think, one of the biggest problems. Like initially I was trying to use it and I didn't have a kid then, and now with a kid it's really hard to like find time to use any of this stuff. So
yeah, it gets easier finding time though, because like I'm on the other side. It's like baby's almost a year and a half, and now I'm like, oh, should I pick up a Vive? Because I'm finding that maybe I have an hour and a half in my day now, more than just 1 hour.
Okay. Yeah, I guess like if you were a regular gamer and then you actually set aside time to game, I feel like you'd be able to sub that time out with a Vive or something else. But I actually just started going back to my PS3 and buying games for that and working on that first before I could actually buy a PS4 and buy games for it and buy a PSVR. And I haven't even found time to play any of the games that I used to play, like nothing. So I'm at a bit of a crossroads right now with my Vive and my whole setup. I think space is such a big concern. I know like the base stations are great, and I've kind of taken over a whole room to myself in the apartment for this, and so far it's been okay. But once my kid grows up and we start having stuff, it's gonna be hard. I'm gonna have to give up the space. So I don't know. Like I wonder if other people have this issue right now with some of these setups where you need a tracking or some sort of area set up for you to be able to.
I know I've already given up all my space. There's no real extra room for me in my whole apartment. Mm-hmm. But I do know that was one of the amazing things with VR in the beginning, was that people were carving out sections of their home just for VR experiences. And still hear stories to this day that people are like, okay, when they're moving, they're like, am I going to have a complete full room scale space available at my new next place I move to? Which is like still amazing that there's enough excitement about the technology
between that's a part, becomes a thing that that's true. Actually, when we were briefly looking for houses before we realized we couldn't afford any, was that some of these houses I was literally just like scoping out the place, and I was like, I could put this, exactly. I could mount this up here, I could mount this here. But I mean,
or the garage.
It's just but it's I think this is like a fascinating piece of technology. Like within a year, this is gonna obviously be replaced, and actually that's probably a good segue.
Well, let's talk about GDC,
so,
right?
So into GDC. So
so for those listening, GDC is the Game Developer Conference that's happened
Yep.
forever, basically, down in San Francisco, Moscone Center. It's about a week-long event. It's crazy. Neither of us attended.
Yes. No, we did not, definitely didn't attend. But yeah, so at GDC, one of the things they announced was a new LG headset to go along with Steam VR. And so it's gonna be able to use the base station technology, and it, from all accounts, it seems pretty nice. There was one reviewer, I think, said that kind of had the comfort of PSVR and field of view of the HTC Vive, and it's supposed to be lighter and works pretty nice. So that's gonna be fun to see when it comes out.
Yeah. So I mean, just to add for our listeners out there, we're talking about these lighthouses that the HTC Vive has, which are the two boxes that are usually in the room that help determine where you're at within the room when you're walking around physically wearing a HTC Vive. And Valve has been licensing out that technology to HTC. Now, a lot of people knew that at some point Valve was going to license out that technology to other manufacturers, and HTC had an exclusivity for, I think, a year or so. So now we're kind of hitting that year timeline. Yep. And LG is like one of the first companies to come out. So what's awesome is they've been able to step back and, as you said, maybe launch a headset that takes all the awesomeness of the PlayStation VR's headset, which I think is like the most comfortable I've tried. And then some other, it's just kind of like 1.1 version. It has just like one iterative step, kind of the best of the best. I think the biggest thing that a lot of people have been talking about is the flip-up visor.
Yeah, the flip-up visor. So essentially, if you can imagine, just any picture of like a Vive type headset, something that covers the front of your face, and then you could just flip up the front part of it, so you don't have to kind of, I guess, like just take this whole big thing that's stuck to the front of your face on and off that way.
I got a good description.
Okay.
A welder's helmet.
Oh, okay.
If anybody's ever seen a welder, they like flip up their helmet and then they just kind of like tap their head down and it slams down back on their face and they go to work.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
But I do wonder about like what kind of seal it's going to create. A lot of people are complain about light leakage.
Yeah. That's definitely going to be a problem, especially. I mean, it depends on how, if they allow something like PSVR where you can tighten up the thing in the back a little bit, so when it comes and sits on the front of your face, that if you tighten the notch back, then maybe it just kind of scrunches that up a little bit tighter, and then when you just release, then you can just flip it up, something like that.
Yeah, so at our last meetup that we had up here near the Seattle area, I was actually mentioning how, I still do not have my own, VR room scale setup. And then Rags is kind of hinting at the fact that he was on the fence about whether he should maybe get rid of his. And then our friend Nima, he had gone down to GDC and he's just like, get the LG headset. He's like, it's just like, if you're ready to buy one, like just, hold out a few more months, I guess, till that one's available. Like he seemed pretty gung ho about it, but he was saying it was pretty legit. We'll have to see. I mean, I guess that's one of the questions. Like if LG just launches a new one and you're in the market, maybe that's the one to go for. But
the other thing is,
I think the key thing that we didn't mention is that this LG headset will run with the Steam.
Correct.
ecosystem.
Yeah. So it's essentially, you could, if you have the Vive, like I have the Vive, and so apparently you can just replace the headset part of it, like keep the base station, keep everything else as is, and just swap out the actual headset. So
I didn't know if that was going to be the case.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understood, that was the case. I don't know. Maybe we need to go back and double check, but I'm fairly certain that it just works with the lighthouses. But the other thing they mentioned was that the new lighthouses, they're actually coming out with a version 2 of the lighthouses themselves. They're going to be more efficient, run on lower power, and they have a single motor as opposed to, I guess this one has multiple motors. I haven't actually read through the comparison of the two, but it's supposed to be a lot nicer. And I don't know if they announced a price for that yet, but it looks nice, and they're trying to sell the lighthouse technology as is, meaning now LG put something out, so there's nothing to stop anyone, like you and I could get together and decide to build a headset, put this thing on, and then it would work with the tracking technology here, and then it's just a matter of getting the headset to work. You can essentially put this thing together and have it work with the thing, and then market it and sell it, and say if you have the Lighthouse stuff and you have the cables, then you could just swap out and then plug this in and everything works, and the tracker and everything is the same, so it doesn't matter. Now, you're talking about the Lighthouse technology. I guess the Vive tracker is separate though, right?
Yeah, so the way I actually heard this on one of the other podcasts there, the Everything Vive podcast, and they were kind of talking about that's one of HTC's methods to try and differentiate from the other headset manufacturers. So basically, HTC's coming out with a lot of accessories. I mean, they also announced, a new head strap, a new cable, these trackers, which we talked about last episode. I believe there are these like hockey
type thing. The front part of trackers. The controller. The Vive controller.
Yeah.
Apparently, so those and the audio cable are $99 each. It's not that expensive. If you have this set up and you're trying to like demo something, trying to put a game together for an arcade, then you're not talking about getting that many. The trackers are an initial one-time investment, which you could even potentially subsidize to these arcade player owners or whatever. And then once they get your game in and then you start making money off of it, $100 a pop, it's like an extra controller type of thing that you can put onto anything and that'll get tracked. Like you could build it into, like I'm thinking of like, there's I think on the at the demo itself they showed baseball bats that had the tracker on that you could basically track in VR.
Or Nima had mentioned the beer koozie. Right, so people were. I mean, I guess like it's somewhat of a legitimate product now, but you slap this tracker onto your, little regular koozie for your soda or other beverage, and then in VR.
Oh, and then like you're like drinking it, and in VR it shows that you're drinking it.
Yes. Because it's always a joke, right? Like, how do you solve being able to eat or drink in VR? And it's a little tough. Hey, you know what? He reminded me of one other thing. Like I remember reading an article, one of the higher ups at Valve had mentioned about their Lighthouse technology.
Yeah.
And, right now, do you know the maximum room scale distance that you can have? Like 10 square feet or something?
I don't know.
Maybe 15. Maybe. Okay, so part of the leadership team up there in Vive, he was just talking about like their long-term roadmap, and they had mentioned the Lighthouse is, going beyond their current suggested maximum limit and saying whole home, Lighthouse technology. So that's like just like blow your mind, right? The fact that you can go to the restroom while wearing your VR headset maybe in the future.
That would be so awesome. Like not to be tethered to a spot, like be able to go into whichever room. Like if I want to go play in the living room, just hang out in the living room with it. Like if I have to move somewhere, just walk into the other part of the house. And not only that, then now you actually have the ability to literally live in a virtual space completely. Like you don't really need any nice things. You can just have really nice things in VR and you're good. I mean, obviously the resolution's only going to get better and better. And then eventually then you can have like the same, everyone can have the same plates. And, the only difference is the designs that you put in into VR, something like Second Life, basically. I mean, except think about it, like Second Life had
now it's First Life.
Basically, it's First Life. I mean, I that's, to me, it's stunning that we're even talking about it and we're considering it.
Yeah. Now, basically, if you're an angel investor or a VC venture capitalist firm out there, just keep pouring your money into this technology and let's see where we can take it.
But on the same token with other headsets. There's the Windows headset that's coming through.
Yeah, so I didn't read much about that. Like, that was last episode again. I was like, I haven't heard much about the Windows news. Is it something I'm going to be able to pick up soon, or do we know?
Yeah, no, I don't think they have a date out there yet. It's actually called Windows Holographic. Right now, I think Acer has a headset that's coming out that's just going to be compatible with Windows 10. So initially, if you have Windows 10, these holographic headsets, they'll just apparently run on your computer. And I believe a lot of these have very similar technology to the HoloLens itself.
I'm running a 10-year-old computer that still runs Windows 10.
I mean,
I'd be very surprised.
Well, I mean, think about it. If it's holographic technology and if they build everything into the headset, and you don't really need much from the computer per se, to run.
Like the opposite of the other devices.
Yeah. I mean, look at the HoloLens, right? The HoloLens is a standalone device. Like it's $3,000, but it's $3,000. It's a standalone device. You are carrying your headset around, and so these will be tethered to your computer. It's just connected via USB. So I don't know. Some of this I'm speculating, but
yeah, I'm sure, just one thing for those that live near a Windows store, they might have seen like Oculus or the HTC Vive, being demoed like in the very front of the store, like in every mall and where a Windows store exists. But I'm sure they would love to rather be demoing a Windows.
Oh yeah,
headset.
I'm sure
it's still like Acer's.
I'm sure like when it starts coming out, they're gonna, because the HoloLens they would demo, but I mean it's an expensive device, so they probably don't want to have like a ton of people handle it and toss it around. But like if they have these guys, and this is kind of, I think we alluded to this at some point in one of our older episodes, where we were talking about eventually headsets shipping out as part of things with a computer. You go to the computer, you say I want a Windows machine, and then it says, well, you can get this Acer headset or this other VR headset if you want, and you just add it to cart and go. I mean, crazy, dude. Like that's just a few months ago that we were like, hey, it'd be really cool if this is something that might happen. Blah. So
that's exactly how I sound in my own head.
Yeah, I know. Same here.
All right, so what other items did we want to cover out of that? That we saw in the news there.
One is there's gonna supposedly a new gear that's gonna come out later this year with the Galaxy S8. Yes. That one, oh, man, I bet it's gonna drop when the iPhone 8 drops, and the new Pixel is probably gonna drop around then too. Oh, it's gonna heat up, and so the new gear is supposed to have a Daydream-like controller associated with it.
Yeah, I saw that. What's weird? The controller reminded me kind of like a mini version of the HTC Vive, like the little trackpad. I think it was angled slightly, like where the Daydream controller is more like the Nintendo Wii.
Yeah, the Wii.
It's just very flat.
Yeah.
It's very flat, and like everything's just kind of on one plane.
Yeah.
Where this looked kind of curved and.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I see gears all the time. I see people carrying them around, showing them to me, demoing them at our meetup. Yeah.
I mean, they just seem like really portable. I just, I'm still like, how is it? So it's kind of like a small set of people, though. You essentially either have to buy, if that's not your primary phone, you just have to buy a Samsung phone, like an S7 now, an S8, I guess. And then, you have to have the headset, and that's supposed to just be a separate thing. Don't you think that it's a very small set of people that actually have the ability to even get a gear?
I don't know. I mean, I think Samsung.
How is it so popular? Seriously. I mean, you have to take like all iPhone users out, right? Like straight up. All users of other Android phones out. All users of older Samsung phones. So you have to have a Samsung. I don't know if it's an S6 or S7, or I don't know where the thing starts for the gear, but it's like there's that actually that big a set of people out there that it's kind of become the primary mobile platform? Is it just nice as a device, so people who are VR developers and such buy a gear and a Galaxy phone just to demo it, or they just decide to use?
I mean, I think it's the big thing. It's like just the portability, right? Like it was the first like mobile VR headset.
So then you're saying the VR developers actually buy this? Like they would have to buy this if that's not their primary device. They would have to make it their primary device.
Well, I mean, the way I understand it, I guess like in the Seattle area, a lot of developers, are really latching on to like Oculus and Vive because it has this like completely immersive experience. But, maybe the mobile VR scene is not as large up here and covered as well. But, I think that's quickly approaching. And, just basically how, the challenge is as fast as mobile hardware can, iterate and get into market, they can put out three versions before we see a second version of the Vive.
Right. I mean, but at the same time, that's the other end of consumerism. That sucks, man, because like, would you gonna keep upgrading your phone and everything like every year, like your headset, your phone,
Apple users do, right?
I mean, Apple users do, right? Like I had my old, until I switched to a 7 Plus, like my last phone is a 5S, which has been my phone for I don't know how many years now.
Yeah.
and you know, it's
I mean, I just think like, again, Samsung, like one of the first primarily, VR, mobile VR focused phones. And I think, I don't know, I never had an Android phone again until the Android Pixel, or the Google Pixel. I think like before, from my perspective here in America anyway, Samsung was kind of like the top of the line type of Android phones. They were the closest thing to like an iPhone. So
yeah. Yeah, I mean, before the Pixel came out, yeah, it was the Galaxy series. It kind of became the Galaxy series versus Apple, and then it was this back and forth because that's why they had all
yeah,
these lawsuits, right? Like the you stole my technology and you stole my technology, whatever. And so that's why, because they were just going back and forth. They were the ones that were kind of untouchable. And then you had HTC making really nice phones, like very good looking phones, solid devices. You had, I mean, Huawei is doing pretty well. Um, you know there's I don't know, like I just am kind of surprised by how many things are gear compatible and how few the user base might have to be for that to actually be viable and such a big deal. And if not, then what does it say about all that marketing? I don't know. It's I need to go look up the numbers or do some research or something, because this is kind of seeming very odd to
okay,
me now.
so
If anyone listening to this has an idea about this, please do.
okay, so you mentioned you have to go look up numbers, maybe like the number of usage, like for mobile phones, etc. I just wanted to quote Chet Falazek, I believe that's how you pronounce the last name. Uh, he wrote on Twitter the other day, I thought it was hilarious. He said, "I wish all the analysts and bankers would agree to use the same random number generator for their VR AR projection." So, I mean, there's a lot of people, basically the point is there's a lot of people coming up with, the number of sales and units sold between all the different, hardware out there. But also, go back a year and even now, it's like the projections are just like all over the place.
Oh yeah, man! Like, cause
You know,
we were at Immerse Summit last year, and I forget who it was one of the keynote speakers, I think, and he was like, "It's projected to be some billions in whatever." And that's a pretty big number. Like, I don't know if that's like hey, it's gonna be in the billions, so all of you should work on it now, or if all of you don't work on it now, it'll not be in the billions, so all of you should work on it now. Like it, I don't know. It's confusing. It just seemed like a out there number.
all right. Well, speaking of price, right? I think one of the biggest, for me, one of the biggest news items was Oculus.
Yeah, the price drop, man.
Yeah. So can you explain that?
So the Rift, they basically announced that the Rift was going to drop in price from $599 to $499. They are dropping the price of the touch controllers to basically $100 from like 200. So essentially, the if you get the Rift plus touch, which would be like 500 plus 200, 700, you're essentially going to buy. It's very similar in price to the Vive now. And Vive basically, HTC said that they're not gonna drop the price of the Vive now or anytime soon. They kind of, I think I forget what the statement was that they put out, but it kind of made it seem like, yeah, we're not an inferior headset that, we're gonna have to hide behind like dropping prices to get people to buy our product or something like that. He basically was kind of talking shit a little bit, and anyway, so it's the price drop is, definitely, I'm sure more people are thinking about it now because it's cheaper. That's a good, $300 savings. So
Yeah, and maybe HTC Vive has a strong enough foothold right now to stand their ground, but I wonder if this puts some pressure like on LG and some of the other upcoming headset manufacturers, that they either have to, you know, push out their release dates because they need to go back to the drawing board and try and figure out how to cut costs, or, release with newer price point that's maybe in between the two. So for consumers, it's a win.
But they're also projecting, I was reading somewhere with the GDC news that they were projecting a drop in prices, steady drop. That's why Valve is basically ready to license out or push out their trackers and say, open it up and let people hook into them, because they're essentially trying to bring down costs repeatedly, and if as they open up those kinds of things, then like we were talking about earlier, if you decide that you just want to focus on building a kind of headset that's more immersive by like that integrates the nautilus that we talked about from the last episode.
There you go.
You could do it, and whatever you spend on it, you spend on it, and it could work. I mean, and it's gonna keep dropping prices. So I'm hoping that by this time next year, it's actually cheap enough to actually swap out headsets. So on to our next topic. You were at a hackathon last week. Was it the week before?
Yeah, it was a couple weeks ago. AT&T had a hackathon that they sponsored here in the Seattle area. And I went, I didn't participate this time in the whole weekend event, but I did go to, see the final presentations. And it was great. There was a couple projects that were interesting. One was the null space, excuse me. One was a team that had used the null space vest, which is a haptic feedback vest from a local startup in the area. And I kind of immediately went over to try out their demo because I had seen their headset in the past, but this is like their newest version that they have on Kickstarter. And it's kind of like their latest prototype. So I wanted to try out the vest, but what I didn't realize was, who exactly the team was. So when I got into the experience, I was very low to the ground, and it was like this sword fighting game where like I was fighting a skeleton, and the only part of their demo that they had set up was the heartbeat of the vest would like thump really hard. So immediately when I was put into this experience, like it was super, super intense. Like I'm fighting the skeleton, and they had this crazy techno music. It was like, it was just like crazy, audio plus the heartbeat of the vest was going, and I was just like, whoa, this is a lot. But again, I was like thrown off because I was really short to the ground. So when I got out of it fairly quickly, but I was like, oh, like the height seemed to be misaligned. And then the team that was helping me demo, they were like, oh, actually that's because our like project manager, he's on a little on the shorter side. And then I was like, well, what do you mean? And they like pointed him out, and it was like this young kid, or boy genius, depending on how you want to think about it. But he was maybe 12 or 13, and I found out that it was his first hackathon ever. He didn't want to look, in his words, like as a moron. So like the week before, he created his first ever 2D game in Unity, and he wanted to just like make sure he knew kind of how to code a little bit. I mean, I think he'd been hacking all along, but he made a game, 2D game. And then so for the week on the hackathon, he showed up, and I guess it was his idea. So the team just let him like project manage and lead the whole project. So they helped him develop it and like work together, art and all that stuff. But it was pretty amazing. Here's this kid, his first, and he was telling me, he's like, hey, this is my first hackathon ever. And I show up and I'm leading a whole team. So it's like, give that kid a couple years, maybe future Mark Zuckerberg, creating Oculus 2.0. I don't know, but yes. It was a pretty amazing story, to like see. And
I mean, that's the bigger, everything we can think about and talk about today, right now, with regards to headsets and, the quality of things and games and such, that's all fine. But the big thing is when you have like people like him, and just other young people around who are still in like high school, or they look at this and they use the headset and they start thinking in more pure terms, not in terms of profit. How can I make money? How can I sell this to someone else? How can I get like customers? More in terms of, okay, now how can I use this? Because, you're thinking more along the lines of, okay, well, there's this problem to solve. How do I solve this problem? Whatever. For people who are young and idealistic to have this purview and this kind of technology available now, that's going to be very exciting to see what they come up with and how they take this forward, because all this is just, it's a spark, right? Like all of the stuff, like the Vive, the Oculus, like any of this stuff is like, oh, actually the other thing is Facebook released Facebook 360, just happened, and it was essentially, I believe it's kind of a portal that you can use, only use Gear VR to get into, and eventually they'll roll it out to all of their headsets. But it's a 360 Facebook, and you get access to all the 360 videos and photos and stuff that have been posted by people, and you just get to check it out. And I don't know, I mean, so I think it's going to be it's gonna be super exciting to see how things progress.
Yeah, I'm looking forward though, like, to see this young creator's next projects. Like, I think this is just the beginning of more to come from him, and I think he was super stoked to try and join new hackathons, and who knows, maybe he'll bring some friends, and it's just kind of cool. You can just start seeing the light bulbs starting to fire in his head.
That's super cool, man.
It was super exciting for him.
That's good stuff.
Also, there was one team that did an escape the room experience. So the concept was you're in the Vive and you're locked in this room, and it's like you got to get out, but there's another person playing on a regular desktop computer, and you need to work cooperatively to help you get out of the room. And like in the experience, like you're the Vive, you're kind of like a normal sized person, but there's this like little miniature like character in the room with you, and that's the person on the desktop. So like in the experience, you like have to like pick them up and like help move them around the room, and then like since they're really small, they could do other things like unlock doors and stuff. And like I've heard of games before VR was mainstream that was more cooperative, or where it was like, it's like one person's giant and then they're playing against 100 people on their computers, and like it's kind of like a giant versus flies, or like where it's not necessarily a social game, but it's breaking down the barrier between people that are like on a desktop environment and VR. And that's kind of what this team was doing. And I just thought it was cool because it seemed like somewhere where we'd want to head with the technology, social and cooperative play. And I just think those things will draw people into a more engaging experience, right?
Yeah, I mean, then they've shown like a lot of studies when they've had people use VR that, given the right circumstances, the right way to present things, it does increase empathy quite a bit.
Okay, so one thing I noticed today in the news was there was an announcement Lowe's was going to start trying to put Vive headsets into their department stores, I think in Canada.
What?
To try and help people.
What? Wait. What? Why would Lowe's?
Oh, yeah, this is new to you, right? Like you don't know this? Okay.
No, I don't know.
So Lowe's is thinking about putting Vive's HTC Vive VR headsets into their stores to help people come in and learn how to do home installations on their own and use it as a training exercise. So one example is I think they're going to try and set up an experience that can help people learn how to install bathroom tiles in their restroom on their own. And
dude, that's so genius. And
I know.
Be like, see, now you know how to do it. Yes. What are they going to be like? Can I take the Vive home and
well, maybe they'll sell those too.
Maybe they'll just rent them out.
Yeah, so I think this is really smart.
What
because
if you actually, you know what? If you think about it now, all they would need is they just need a tracker or a tracker thing that'll actually hold a tile or something.
Oh, you feel the weight of it?
So you can not only can feel the weight of it, you can physically actually put the Vive on and tile the exact tiles based on the tracker, because the tracker is showing you exactly where to put it because it knows how big the room is.
That'd be cool if they were like super glued to the tiles though, and then you can just like grab the puck and then like
no, like it would be like a holder of some sort, or it would be like, I don't know, it'd have to be, or the
well, technically you could just grab the damn tile, right?
Technically you could just grab the damn tile, yes.
Yeah, and you'd know the exact measurements. It's to be 12 inches by 12 inches, and the puck is super glued to the center, and you can move it around, right? Have 6 of them. I don't know. It didn't explain how the demo was going to be, but I mean, if you've been, so Lowe's is a department store in the United States for those of you outside of our country, and apparently in Canada, but some of these department stores do hold like weekend workshops to help answer questions or train people on a lot of do-it-yourself home repairs. And I think we also hear on the flip side is that VR might be a great way to help train people on how to do a job or prepare for some catastrophe or something. And it's just like, well, here's a perfect example of Lowe's maybe executing. And I think you could maybe run 12 people a day maybe through this training schedule using the Vive.
But I mean, that's I mean, good on Lowe's for trying that out. The more we see these kinds of novel applications, it's going to push the community, it's going to push the concept, and more and more people are going to try it out. And as people keep trying it out, they're going to understand like what the limits or non-limits of this platform in general, and virtual reality, mixed reality, these kinds of things are going to be. So yeah, I think it's been a long episode, so we'll close out with a quick shout out to few folks who actually wrote into us. Who are you gonna shout out to, Kirk?
Yeah, so one is actually a coworker of ours. So he wrote into us physically at the office the other day. Shahaz, he seemed pretty gung ho. He liked it, liked the quality, liked what we were talking about. Gave us some tips. So appreciate that. Hopefully, we can keep holding him on as a listener. Also, Adam, he was out in the global Slack channel that we hang out at, and he kind of mentioned out the audio quality he liked, which I gave all the credit to Rags for helping edit all of these podcasts.
Why thank you, Kirk.
You know it. Credit where credit's due. And then a final shout out to Patrick Catazarardi. He actually posted us on Product Hunt for our podcast, so we appreciate that. We'll post that link for anyone who would like to go out and upvote our podcast on Product Hunt. And he also sent us a really lengthy email with a bunch of feedback that we're actually working on. He had some great ideas too. So hopefully we can, take that feedback and make this a better podcast for everyone out there listening. If you want to catch his Twitter handle, I think it's that Patrick guy, and he runs a website called devdiner.com. So check him out if you're into that. Okay, so This is Kirk.
And this is Rags, and my very silent handle on Twitter is @BrownChannel, BRWNCHNL.
Yep, and this is Kirk again, signing out at the VRPM on Twitter. And again, our website, cvrnt.com.
Stands for current VR, basically.
Current with a catchy.
Yeah. With the way the kids spell it these days.
Yeah, I mean, maybe one day we should say how we came up with the name. But
all right, guys.
Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. Hit us up. Share the podcast with your friends. That'd be awesome.
All right. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Catch you next time.